Okay, I started it.
Great. Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the final installment of our Summer Professional Development Series. Today, we are super excited to have Dr. Rollins with us teaching about community-based participatory research. So Dr. Latrice Rollins is an associate professor at Morehouse School of Medicine in the Department of Community Health and Preventative Medicine and Prevention Research Center. She is also the director of the National African American Child and Family Research Center. Dr. Rollins is a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Culture of Health leader whose work is focused on father engagement and father inclusive practices in health and human services. She is the principal investigator for several community-based participatory research studies focused on father engagement in health and human services. She is also the editor of the books Engaging and Working with African American Fathers, Strategies and Lessons Learned in Health, Parenting, and Community Perspectives on Black Fatherhood, Defying Stereotypes and Amplifying Strengths. She received her bachelor's degree in sociology from Spelman College and her master's and doctorate in social work from the University of Georgia. So if you all can give us a virtual hand clap to welcome Dr. Rollins, or if you're on camera and we can see you, that works too. And I will pass it on to you, Dr. Rollins.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Bentley. It is an honor to be here with you all today and to share one of my loves, the community-based participatory research approach. I've done a number of presentations on this before and definitely hope to learn a bit from you all about this as well if you all have engaged in this approach at all in your work. So let's get started. Is everything showing appropriately? All right, good deal. I'm your last session. All right. So what we want to do today. So we want to talk about what community-based participatory research is, or CBPR. I'll try to go back and forth between that acronym and the full term. We're going to also talk about the importance of doing CBPR, so give you some examples, as well as talk about some challenges with doing this type of research. And we will walk through a plan. And so since we're a small group, we should be able to have good conversation together today. Good to see some of y'all. Some of y'all I haven't seen in a while. Good to see you. Okay. All right. So we are going to actually start with a poll, and I'm going to launch this. I want to know how familiar you all are with CBPR. Is this something you never heard of? Is something you just heard of? Something you read a bit about? Or this is an approach that you've actually used? So I'll give you all a moment to do the poll. And I'll share some results. You all get ready. Y'all are not going to sit here and just listen to me talk. We're going to do some polls. We're going to have some chat, have some discussion and conversation. It just would not be community-based if I sat here and talked to you all the whole time. All right. Excellent. So what I can see, and I don't think I'm able to share it, but or at least I don't know how. But what I can see is that most of you have used CBPR. 5 have used it. And then there are 2 who have never used it or never heard of it before. So we're going to try to balance with the content that's shared to help folks who are totally new to this and folks who are true to this. So we are going to move forward. Oh yeah, I can share. There you go. You all can see that. Good deal. All right. So y'all are split on both ends of the spectrum. So let's get active in the chat now. Let's see, in one word, what does community mean to you? And this is a critical step as you're thinking about conducting community-based participatory research. What is community? Who is the community that you're thinking about working with? What does that mean? And you can just put one word in the chat and I'll share. Or if you want to come off mute, you can also just say what your one word is as well. What does community mean to you? Relatable, family, stakeholders, people with common interests, yep. Neighbors, togetherness. Okay, Joyce Sanchez. Oh, yeah, I had the same one. Togetherness. Awesome. Excellent. And just to let you all know, there's no right or wrong answers. This is just getting us to collaborate and have some discussion here. Excellent. So these are all good. It just really depends on what your research project is going to be about and who you want to engage. Neighbors. Okay, good deal. Okay. So before we even get into what CBPR is, I've really honed my community engagement and CBPR skills by working closely over the past 10 years with faculty at Morehouse School of Medicine. The importance and practice of community engagement at Morehouse School of Medicine has led to numerous awards, a lot of work that they have done across the African diaspora as it relates to community engagement. And so they actually wrote a book. Some of our faculty wrote a book called The Morehouse Model and published this model that I'm showing you about community engagement. And so to get started with CBPR, you have to first understand how to engage the community. And we have really embraced the model by taking time out to define the communities of focus, to develop partnerships with community leaders who are either leading in particular spaces or they are affected by the programs or services or issue that we're wanting to address. We are also looking to collaboratively identify issues that need further research or data that could be mutually beneficial, not just to us as an academic institution, but also to the community. And so they have these, various steps. But as you see at the very beginning is bonding and trust development. That's the first thing, figuring out who's doing what and developing a relationship with them before you go into any conversation. You see there's 3 steps before we even get to talking about a project and actually doing work. So a lot of time spent around engaging the community and developing the relationship before we get started with research. And you all can stop me if you have questions too. So this is a definition of CBPR that I have shared frequently. It is also published in an earlier book that our faculty wrote on CBPR. I love that this definition focuses on CBPR as an approach. It is not a research method. You can use CBPR in various research designs, whether it's the gold standard of a random controlled trial or quasi-experimental type of designs, you can use CBPR. So I love that this definition emphasizes that those affected by the issue being studied, those organizations and those researchers all work together in every aspect of the research process. And it also lifts up the importance of action and social change. We have a former community board chair who would always say, we're not doing research for research sake. We have to have some action. We have to see things through and have the data lead to change. So this is definitely a more action-oriented type of research approach. So I want to share with you all some principles of CBPR. In 2017, me and one of our Community Coalition Board members applied and were accepted to attend the CBPR Partnership Academy at the University of Michigan. He shared with me prior to the academy that, he had been doing CBPR but he didn't really have a full understanding and appreciation of what it really meant and what it entailed. Dr. Selena Smith and colleagues described this same issue when they worked with community coalition members, and they worked together to develop these 7 CBPR principles for the African American community. And so I do understand that, African Americans are diverse. And so some of these terms may not necessarily speak to you. Obviously, we have African, Caribbean, lots of different flavors to our community. And so some of these may not resonate right away. But the essence of the principles are still important. So I'll describe them briefly. So we are family. CBPR, this really means that it provides a framework for working toward a common goal, as some of you said in your definition of community. Similar to a family, CBPR is based on an understanding of and a respect for different interests, and also working within partnership in communities. And so having this common goal, it helps the researchers, organizations, community members, despite their differences, to address issues that are important to everyone. It takes a village is really talking about the aspect of trust, which is the key to all the partners functioning and working as a village. And so the village really focuses on that co-learning, the shared decision making, and the mutual ownership of problems as well as solutions. A lot of times when we bring folks together, they start to talk about you all, right? Like what you can do, and we have to constantly remind them that, no, this is us. This is what we're going to do together. And so this CBPR principle also requires that we respect the expertise and perspectives of community partners, even more so than those of the researchers. So folks who are actively living in the particular issues or circumstances that we're seeking to address, they have more expertise than those of us that are not, right? Come as you are really describes our call to the community and indicates the willingness of researchers or organizations to meet community partners on their own turf and on their own terms. Partnership starts by recognizing the community partner strengths as well as their assets, and also addressing those areas that need improvement. Just Stand supports maintaining direct and extended involvement with the community, building on past success and not rushing the process. We will talk later about time as a factor, but it is really this cyclical and iterative process, and it is a long-term commitment. Many of the community partners that I have, I've been working with them 10 years plus. And so just we just continue to build and continue to evolve the various projects that we're working on. As far as health, wholeness, and healing, most community members or program participants have little interest in being studied. Most folks that you will approach in a community are not interested in being a part of a research study. They are, though, concerned about education, they're concerned about jobs, they're concerned about healthcare, they're concerned about their community, the youth, and various entities that are going to improve their well-being. So making sure that, again, this is not research for research's sake, but you're emphasizing action and outcome benefits of CBPR, which are the key. And then Go Tell It on the Mountain is really emphasizing the role of the community in disseminating the results of CBPR. For years, community members have participated in studies from which they do not see the results or experience any benefits. And so it's important to have a shared plan in place detailing how results will be shared. So any type of assessments, any type of listening sessions, any surveys, we make sure that we share that information back with the community. We shall overcome someday. This principle reminds us that the overall goal is to eliminate inequities that plague our communities, and we really want to advance justice. So CBPR has evolved into a research approach that, when carried out according to its core principles, really embraces anti-racism principles, many principles related to advancing justice, and it can be a tool to dismantle structural inequities, particularly in the United States, but also globally. So that said, I would love for you all to put in the chat which principle of CBPR stands out to you most and why. And so you can either put that in the chat or you can come off mute and just share which one of these principles really resonates with you, really speaks to you, and why?
Can I come off mute?
Absolutely.
Hello, everybody. I think the one that really resonated with me was Go Tell It on the Mountain, because people need to have their own resolve and be able to speak for themselves. We're not there to speak for them. We're there to provide what they need so that they can have the tools to speak for themselves. And so I believe in that wholeheartedly. And so that's why I chose that one.
Awesome. Thank you, Kenya. Anyone else in the chat, or you can come off mute and just share which principle stands out to you and why. Okay, it takes a village. Okay, a couple, two for it takes a village. We do not get anywhere in life alone. We all need someone or others to help us on our journey. It takes a village, mainly because it takes more than a researcher to truly make an impact. Absolutely. Okay.
I like the principle of we are family, especially because researchers of color are so underrepresented. So when we're working with the populations that we come from, it's a much different experience. And oftentimes it is like legit our family or friends of our family that are represented in that community, in our communities. And so I think we bring a much different lens to research and can truly and genuinely show up in a familial way because of our lived experiences. So that's one that resonates with me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, after a time of working with the partners, you do become family, in a sense. Um, okay, Rachel, it takes a village. The community makes the work possible and won't exist without this collaboration. Absolutely. Yeah. And something we are cautious of, even as Black researchers who are typically doing research with Black communities, is not assuming that we automatically have the community trust and we automatically um, are family. We have to work towards that because we are still seen as academic, and so we have to still work to make sure that that trust is earned. Okay, it takes a village because it provides an opportunity to showcase and value Indigenous knowledge. I love that. Yeah, let me see. Indigenous knowledge, yes. Yes, it takes a village is a good one. And just again, echoing a lot of your points around making sure that everybody is contributing their strengths and assets and things to the work. Um, Let me see. HHH. Okay, yeah. You simplified it. Health, wholeness, and healing, I'm assuming. It is important to address the root causes in a holistic and sustainable way. HWH, yeah. We shall overcome someday because when people share their lived experiences, it gives courage to others doing the work and know that social change can be achieved. Yeah. We have to have hope. Some of these things that we're dealing with definitely can be depressing, can get people down. But to keep people engaged, to keep people going in the work and excited about the work, we have to believe that we can affect change in some way. So definitely. Anyone else want to share, come off mute or want to share in the chat? All right. All right, so here are some of the benefits if you haven't caught on to some of those yet. So, having new views, so CBPR can promote relationships among various partners, whether that's organizations, leaders, advocates, community residents, program participants, et cetera, and it can uncover the insights that each group brings that they wouldn't be able to know about or understand alone. Resources, with that, this approach also recognizes resources and assets in the community, not just needs. And so, besides them being additional thought partners, you have more capacity to accomplish research tasks. So whether that's recruitment, whether that's interpretation of results, instrument development, dissemination of results, you have more resources, more people to help you with the project. Visibility and voice. So I think somebody already mentioned this about when we were talking about go tell it on a mountain, but it actively disrupts hierarchies with shared leadership from community and co-investigators, researchers. We're all generally people of color, and so being able to give voice, allow them to, or not allow them, but to provide that space for them to share, whether it is in community presentations, research, scientific conferences, but really lifting up and bringing awareness to issues that are important to community members and giving that additional visibility and attention for action. Results are more translatable, and that's my favorite part. As a social worker, I don't like doing a whole lot of talking about the issue over and over and over. I want to get to how can we fix this? How can we improve the situation? And I really love this aspect of CBPR where everyone is working together and you're not waiting on a journal article to be published, or you're not waiting until the end of a study to have any lessons learned. Everyone is learning throughout the process, and things that we learn that are working, typically the community partners, organizations, they go ahead and implement those right away. And so we have found that, again, these results are more quickly translated into practice. And so there's also power in the data from and with the community. So if they have policymakers and they want to share these data, constituents want to share these data with policymakers, it tends to speak more loudly because it's coming directly from the community and they can actually see these things have worked. These things have already been put in place and have been effective. So we'll talk a bit about the process, and this is also this figure or a semblance of it is included in our latest book that the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network put out in our chapter about community-based participatory research with African American fathers. And so we use this model. This is a figure that was designed by the Detroit Urban Research Center, which was led by Dr. Barbara Israel at the University of Michigan, where I mentioned earlier, I was trained with one of my partners. And so CBPR typically involves several steps, emphasizing collaboration and community involvement throughout the research process. And so these steps include forming a CBPR partnership, assessing community strengths and dynamics, identifying priority concerns or priority issues and those research questions. It doesn't have to just be public health, although it says it there. Designing and implementing the research, sharing and interpreting your findings, and disseminating the results. In the center is maintaining, sustaining, and evaluating the CBPR partnership. That's also very central to any part of the process, is making sure that stays intact. And so ultimately, CBPR aims to work with communities and create positive change through equitable research partnerships. So I want to talk you all. Oh, okay, go ahead, Rachel. I'm sorry.
Hi, Dr. Rollins. No, that's okay. I just wanted to ask because I don't want to jump the gun if you are going to talk about this since part of your plan, but I was just wondering if at some point we could talk more about the step of actually forming a CBPR relationship and sort of like in that other figure you showed with all the steps, sort of those first few steps you mentioned about like what goes establishing those relationships in the first place. So I just wanted to at some point mention that.
Great. Thank you for that question. And yes, so I'm going to walk through two examples of CBPR studies that I've done and talk through each of the steps. And if it still is a question for you, feel free to come off mute and ask about it.
Thank you.
And so Project Dine, all of these acronyms and names, I'm not good at all. I always ask the fathers or partners that we work with, come up with the name for the project. And so Project Dine was Dads in Nutrition Education. It was a 3-year study that was funded by the Office of Minority Health. And I'm going to walk through the various steps. So the first step, forming a CBPR partnership. So I was invited as academic institute to participate in the Department of Public Health, Maternal and Child Health Fatherhood Initiative. They had a collaborative of fathers, community organizations, academic institutions, and they wanted to see how they could increase father engagement throughout the maternal and child health section of the health department's programs and initiatives. And so that was bringing a number of different people to the table, common interests, all of us interested in father engagement, all of us trying to figure out how we can better support fathers who are in this kind of perinatal phase, whether it's prenatal all the way to postpartum. And so with that partnership, there were a number of different steps. There was the development of a charter so that everybody can kind of understand each other's agenda, understand each other's values. Before we even got to getting to the issue of how we're going to have a project in the maternal and child health space, it was really how are we as partners going to work together? We understand we have this common interest. We were all invited to the table. We had not previously worked together, many of us. So how are we going to work together? What are our values? We had a charter. We had a logic model that was developed. There was a infrastructure in terms of committees that were created for this partnership. The name was Strong Fathers, Strong Families of Georgia. And so we formed this partnership through the course of working together and talking, figuring out what are the strengths and dynamics of each partner. We figured out that nutrition was an asset, a resource that was available in the community, but was underutilized through WIC and through a nutrition education class that was done through the cooperative extension. So we understood there were some resources, there were strengths in the community, but they were underutilized. We also recognized that the fathers and their partners that were coming through some of the maternal and child health programs had issues around whether it was food insecurity, whether it was having issues with chronic disease, whether it was diabetes, whether it was high blood pressure, hypertension, those types of things. And so one of our fatherhood partners said, why don't we put these things together? Why don't we find out if there's a way that our Healthy Start programs that are working with these expecting parents, if they could match with some of these nutrition resources that are in our community. And lo and behold, there was this funding opportunity that came out of the Office of Minority Health that asked for you to identify 2 health issues and basically test an evidence-based intervention and modify it to see if it's effective. And so our evidence-based intervention was the Healthy Start program and model. The modification was going to be to add nutrition education as well as father engagement to see if that had any impact on maternal health and infant health outcomes. So as far as that's the third step of identifying the health issue and the research question. The next thing around designing and conducting the research, that again was collaborative. So now that we have put in or brought in this Healthy Start program, we couldn't just dictate what the Healthy Start program staff are going to do in relation to this research. So we had to have we had bi-weekly meetings with the Healthy Start program staff, with the fathers, with the nutrition education staff, with the WIC staff, to design what this research could look like. We also had biostatisticians who kind of let us know, how many people we had to have involved for power analysis and all of this type of stuff. But we needed to talk with the program folks to see if any of this was feasible, if it was if we were going to be able to recruit that number of people that were required, how would we recruit them? As far as designing the surveys that they would take, we decided to do a baseline survey, a survey at 3 months, a survey at 6 months. We talked together about what was the criteria for people to participate in the research. Every decision we worked together to figure out how we were going to conduct the study. With the feedback and interpreting findings, we didn't wait until we got survey results. As we were meeting bi-weekly, whatever was going on with recruitment, whatever was going on with the classes that were going on at the time, we were sharing that during the meetings. And so that was giving us an opportunity to continuously improve, make changes, do what we needed to do, as well as be able to interpret if things were not going well, if we needed to make shifts, or if things were going well, we needed to continue it and then replicate it across the various sites. So we were working with 6 different sites. In terms of disseminating and translating research findings, we have done 2 journal articles on this study, and everyone who was involved, including some of our fatherhood partners, they are co-authors. We have presented on this work at numerous scientific, national kind of conferences, as well as community conferences or community meetings even. There was a community meeting with the Georgia Association of Pediatrics, and they wanted to know more about it. We just did a presentation for them. So, and we've done infographics, like a number of different things. There's a website that's there, just a number of different things to just kind of get the word out about this research. As far as maintaining, sustaining, and evaluating the partnership, we do have a tool. It was developed by Coalition Works. It will, keep you honest, because it does look at all aspects: communication, decision making, leadership, areas of opportunity. Like, did you provide opportunities for your community partners outside of kind of what you needed as an academic, and those types of things? And so that is something that is done annually and reviewed. And so but yeah, and I'm proud of this work, because even though that particular federal grant ended, we were able to have one of our community partners, our Father Movement. They've gone on and gotten their own contracts and funding, and have continued this work, working with expecting parents, providing physical activity as well as nutrition education to those families. And so, the work goes on. That's one example. Any questions before I go on to another example? Okay. All right, so talking through RUSH, again, another acronym I've not come up with. This is Research to Understand Systems for Housing. This was a 1-year pilot feasibility study that was funded by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. As far as the CBPR partnership that was a part of this, we had the RUSH Coalition, which consisted of medical care partners, social systems, social services providers, which mainly came from our Fathers Matter ATL coalition, so folks that typically work with fathers. And we also had the public health department, county public health department, as a part of this. We had fathers who had previously or currently were experiencing homelessness, as well as fathers who have worked with this population before. In identifying this particular issue, our Addressing Mass Incarceration group, that is a part of Fathers Matter ATL, identified housing as a major need for fathers when we were someone reached out, a dad reached out to us. He was staying in his car with his child. And even with the many partners that we had, it was extremely difficult to quickly get him a stable and safe place to stay quickly. And so after that particular instance, and experience, we realized, this is a major issue. And so the Systems for Action opportunity through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation came about. They wanted to know if you could implement a systems alignment approach across the different partners to see if a particular approach would work to address a public health issue. And so we worked with our coalition to design the research similar to what we did with Project Dine. Anything as it relates to the participant criteria, the number of folks we were going to talk to, the interview guides, all of those things. We worked together to figure out how we were going to do that. And when we conducted, this was mainly qualitative. We did have some secondary data that we received from the Homelessness Management Information System, but mainly qualitative. And so as we were conducting interviews with partners, we would analyze those quickly and then share it in our next meeting with the coalition to get their feedback and figure out if, we were on the right track in those things in terms of our interpretation. As far as disseminating and translating these findings, again, this is another project Proud is going on with our community partner as lead, working with the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office and their Housing Help Office to make sure that fathers who are experiencing challenges before they become homeless, that they're offering resources to them. And so that work is continuing. And we have presented, there are a number of YouTube videos about this work and about this study. During the summer lab, we have developed an article and submitted it for publication. So we're continuing to get the word out about this work and about the importance of this issue. All right. So what I would like to know, unless you all have questions about kind of walking through the steps of a actual research project, what do you see as the biggest challenges? And I'll launch this poll and get you all's thoughts. What do you all see as a big challenge in CBPR? Is it time? Is it funding? Is it building trust? Is it the culture of academia or something else? Waiting on 2 more responses. All right, 1 more response. All right. So, great. 100% participation. I love it. Let's share this. What I see, we have most people concerned about building trust. Let's share. Someone speak more about that.
I can speak from my experience in this, which can differ probably from how other people are thinking about it. But I think I I've run into a situation where, I've been involved in research or working with populations and communities that are different than perhaps my own
Mhm.
sometimes, like especially as like a woman who's been involved in fatherhood research.
Mhm.
Obviously there can be mismatches there in terms of identity. And I'm now working in like the policy and advocacy space at like primarily like a law firm, and running into this situation where our organization is really interested and committed to working with folks with lived experience and working with community and having them involved in all of the work that we're doing. Um, but I think it's, there's the barrier of like lawyers or researchers, approaching communities, and that feeling, I think folks not really knowing like how to approach and how to build trust with communities that we aren't necessarily members of ourselves or familiar with, especially since we're a national organization and we might be going into all different sorts of states or communities. And so I think, in terms of like um that struggle, I think that can make it difficult to figure out how to build trust in that way.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for that, Rachel. I understand. Um, I think I'll just share what I have done. And it may not be exactly similar, but when I worked for child support enforcement, child support is not viewed as a friend to anybody, not to mom or not to not to dad. And going out into the community to share about our fatherhood program, there was a lot of mistrust, rightfully so. Folks felt like, if I participate in this, this isn't a real program. I'm going to be locked up, etc. Um, my objective was not to go in first with my agenda. So I identified a number of community coalitions that work with families, that would work with the population that I was, seeking to get the resources to, and supported them in their work. Showed up for whatever health fairs, even though I wasn't doing anything around health, but supported them, helped them to plan, kind of showed myself as a partner, um, before being like, well, come to do what I'm doing, right? And so building trust, a lot of times it is mutual, right? Like you have to learn your partner, you have to identify the right partners, and they have to learn and figure out if you're right for them too. And a lot of the ways that I've done that has been figuring out what we're, kind of mutually interested in, how I can be an asset and a resource to them, and then sharing how I feel that they can be a resource and asset to me. I hope that is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, I feel like they all build into each other. Yeah. So yeah, to some degree, Julana, for sure. Community members who have already been approached by universities many times are disappointed and feel abandoned after the data is calculated. That's a big fear of mine, to be honest. Yes, yes, we have definitely walked into situations like that, particularly in the Atlanta area where you have a number of universities together in one area that are all doing surveys and trying to get community residents to participate and all of that. And sometimes some of those universities don't exactly do, um, you know, fairly and equitably in terms of on how they compensate folks for participation and even how they share what were the results of the surveys. And so we have walked into those situations where people, they're upset, and so, um, but again, you acknowledge that you don't skirt around it. You don't, what I mean, make people feel like, no, you shouldn't feel this way. Yeah, you should feel this way. You should be a gateway to your community, not, you should be protective of your expertise and of your data, et cetera. And like I said, we continue to show up. We continue to show ourselves as partners, as friendly, as um, collaborators and partners in the work, so that that kind of goes down over time. It doesn't go away right away. You always gonna have somebody that's just, they're gonna be upset, but if you are consistent and you continue to show up, over time, folks will get over it. And especially people who are trusted in the community, if you win them over, then they pretty much will get other people on board too. I don't want to overpromise and miss. Yep. So you have to take that off of yourself. Can you, if you're working together, and it's, again, they're not focusing on you, but if this is a we, then this is a win for all of us, or this is a lesson learned for all of us. Okay. All right. I think even based on experience, despite being from the same community, there is still that level of mistrust, because for communities, especially those that have been historically marginalized and harmed by research, they may see it as exploited. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I said, even if you're from the same community, you still have to work to make sure that trust is earned. It's not automatically granted to you just because you look the same. Okay, Dr. Lemons, I will soon be losing a colleague for this reason. She's a CBPR, but her approach was not appreciated because of the amount of time it took her to produce. Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
before that, Dr. Rollins, I'm sorry, there was another comment I made that gives more context to that second statement. I said that academic culture, i.e. publish or perish philosophy, often runs counter to CBPR. Being on a tenure track makes doing CBPR work difficult because of the pressures to produce. And then I also said you are in a unique place being at Morehouse School of Medicine because they get it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and two, like I said, we learned from University of Michigan, which is not at Morehouse. Also the University of New Mexico, they also have a huge like CBPR emphasis and focus. And so even though it takes time to build these partnerships, and that, it generally doesn't take a long time to publish either. You can publish conceptual pieces like we did with Dine, just kind of how we developed, how we worked together. You can do more kind of methods pieces. We've done pieces just about our partnership survey. We've done pieces just about our community and needs and assets assessment survey. So there are pieces that you can publish while you're waiting or working towards results. So, it just, yeah, there are multiple ways to get at it.
Yeah, I think she didn't really have that
Support.
guidance. Yeah, that guidance and support to know, how to plan her work, in such a way that would allow her to produce those pieces in the interim as she was working on, because she could have published her protocol, from her intervention as she was doing. It's so many things, so I feel for her, in terms of having to move on because she was not able to produce at the pace that they wanted her to.
Yeah. It's definitely unfortunate. And it's frustrating. I think it's much better now, because there were even some journals that didn't quite get it, and so there had to be a lot of back and forth with reviews and comments and stuff like that before a paper could be published. But it's starting to get better now in terms of that. Let's see, what has helped me in building trust with communities that I work with is to build relationships with community-based organizations that do similar work and work as partners in the research project. The CBO already has the goodwill of the community. Absolutely. We definitely embrace that with the National African American Child and Family Research Center, us being here in Georgia. We needed to reach out to community-based organizations in other states that work with these same issues that we're focused on. And that's how we were able to get a lot of listening sessions and surveys and various things done because of building off of that kind of social capital that they had. But even still, you got to find the right partner there, because there are some CBOs that are not well respected in their community. So you got to find the right one.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. And so there's some comments in response to you, Dr. Lemons, about the value placed on other methods, for sure. And so again, CBPR is an approach. And so you can still, again, have that gold standard of a random control trial or whatever the case as a method with CBPR. So it all depends. So building trust was the biggest one you all shared. Funding. Yeah, I think that's changing now, honestly. I think more funders are looking for you to have some form of community collaboration. There needs to be something in there, particularly if you're dealing with any type of inequities or particular issues. They're looking for that collaboration. Academic culture, for sure. I think we've touched on that. I'm not sure what the other was. If somebody wants to come off mute, share what other challenges you suspect.
Hey, Dr. Rollins. Oh, it was me. I chose other. And I chose other because it was a mix of all of them that
Okay.
I've seen, and I couldn't just pinpoint one. I've seen different challenges. I reside in Greensboro, and so the two, if anybody knows about Greensboro, it's about at least 7 to 8 colleges in the city, but the two larger ones is UNC Greensboro and NC A&T, and they're very close to each other, extremely close. They're both located on the same street essentially, but the
Mhm.
cultures there are very different, which what you would expect, HBCU and the PWI. But the fact that they're so close, you would think there'd be some type of overlap and similarity, but even in collaborations, it's still very different. And so I have ties with both colleges, universities, and working in the community with one is very different than working in the community with the other, as far as the amount of support that we have, funding, time, expectations. It's very different, and so that's why I chose other.
Mhm. Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Dr. Roberts. It's so true, that a lot of these various challenges can happen at once. And so I'll open it up to you all to talk about how you might begin to address some of these challenges in your own context. I've shared, you know, my thoughts on how some of these can be overcome. But what do you all think?
I know for me, one of the things that I'm doing with the support of the center that I'm at UNC Greensboro is cross collaboration. And I find that to be helpful because what I'm learning now that I'm embedded in the university workings, that there is a lot of um and I use this word uh, kind of angry. This might not be the correct word, but there is a lot of duplication of work, and I know there's probably a better word to use that captures that. But what I'm learning is that a lot of the centers that we have here at UNC Greensboro, they're doing similar work. Like for example, one of the center that I'm at is at the Center for Housing and Community Studies, and but we do a lot of needs assessments and program evaluation here at this center, whereas another center will do very much the same thing. So instead of trying to duplicate work or compete for the same type of funding or compete with trying to support certain communities in our area, we're working together and sharing the responsibilities, sharing resources, and versus saying I'm from the Center of Community Studies, Housing Community Studies versus SERVE, which is one of the other centers here. We just say we're from UNCG. That's one of the ways that's just helpful because the community, they don't necessarily care what center you're from.
Right.
If you're here to help, help or whatnot. And so, and not necessarily here to help, but I think collaborate.
Right.
If you're here to collaborate with us, then collaborate with us. Your center and the politics of that's you do that on your own time and figure that out. But collaboration, and that's one of the things that I'm finding to be very helpful is collaborating with other centers, and um, I think that's been helpful with reducing some of this the time and the funding barriers that I have been experiencing.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for that example. It's so true. There's a lot of things that, within one institution, it was like, well, we're doing that too. We're doing that too. And the community doesn't care, like you said, which is which. They just know the main name. And
Mm-hmm.
so for one of our projects, the community told us we don't want to do any more surveys. Like, look at the data y'all already collected. Like, look at
Yes.
then, and so, you have to just kind of work with the community and figure out which is best.
I'll say, in the work that I have done for last 15 years or so, it's in a neighborhood that is seems to be the target of a lot of well-intentioned support, but seems like community members really feel there's a lot of suspicion about who you are and what your motives really are. And I almost clicked the option of time, because it feels to me like time just really proving yourself as something more than just another person to kind of use use the community for your particular needs or whatever. Also elders, I found that like sometimes unsuspecting people in a community are who you might not see out in front are really powerful voices when you're learning about a community and kind of figuring out what the place is, but also they're gatekeepers that have a lot of sway, because they're born there, raised there, and have lived their life there, and um, so
Yep. And they definitely can accelerate that timeline for you. Our
yeah,
board chair, Miss Ella Trammell, she had to be in her 80s or so. And she got it done, If we
yeah,
needed help with recruiting or whatever the case, she was all in. So that meant the neighborhood was all in.
yeah,
And so she would give them surveys. Hey, y'all need to take this survey, or hey, we need to have this event. We need, and there was no telling Miss Trammell no. So
yeah,
so you definitely tap into those resources in your community to get things done and to help build that trust, especially if it's a community, like you said, that has been tapped frequently for whatever reason. For instance, like our Arthur Blank Foundation here, they wanted to build a Mercedes-Benz Stadium in downtown Atlanta, which they did do. But as a part of that, they committed to working with those neighborhoods that were around the stadium, to address, pour money into those communities, whatever it was, youth development, health issues, etc. So they kind of were suspicious after a while, like, oh, you just built built the stadium, and now you got what you wanted, and now y'all are about to go out, So going back into that community, you have to show that, we're here long term. We're not going to just get what we want and be out. Whatever you all need us for, we're here for the long run.
We got I think 3 years of flag football money from Arthur Blank. Probably around that time.
Yeah, they gonna make sure, like, all right, we'll
Yeah,
give you a little coin, but we're gonna build up this.
yeah.
We're gonna do what we want to do. So yeah. All right, let's see. Have just a few more things left, and you all feel free to put stuff in the chat or questions if you have them. As we think about, additional challenges, thinking about power and ethics in community-based participatory research, we often have all these quotes about the table, right? Have a seat at the table. If you're not at the table, you on a menu, create your own table, build your own table, all these things about the table. But however you look at the table, here are a few questions that you can consider when you're conducting CBPR. So who sits at this table? We have to think about, as we've talked about, there's this already mistrust of research, even more so now in terms of what we consider evidence and all of those things in the particular climate we're in. And so we have to figure out who needs to be a part of a conversation and a part of the work that's going to be done. As researchers, as academics, we have to relinquish control. And that for a lot of people is hard in terms of making the decisions, figuring out like how things should go. You got to let that go. This is a shared leadership, shared decision making approach. And so that trying to figure out a right way to call it, but that just kind of idea that the researcher, the scholar, whoever knows best, and no, like there are other people that have better insights into what you're trying to do and can actually make the project better if you are willing to share the decision making and share the process. Who sets the table? So again, this is different agendas, different values are going to exist between and among the academic and community. A lot of times community is not monolithic, right? So just because you go to a particular neighborhood and you have particular leaders sitting at that table, there may be some people in that community that say that person does not speak for me, right? So there could be all kinds of things that happen, right? But we have to figure out how to get on that common page, how to bring all of our particular priorities and values together to be able to move things forward. There are a number of resources now, number of toolkits, guides that help with creating these structures, templates for procedures as it relates to data management, as it relates to a membership agreement or coalition agreement. Dissemination plans, like there are a number of templates out now that can help to, facilitate some of these conversations and get people on the same page. Training, figuring out what type of technical assistance needs exist among both, whether it's the community or academic partners, and making sure that that gets taken care of. Budget, if you have one. I haven't always had a budget for some of the community work that I've done, but if you have one, it's important to be transparent about that and to make sure that, people who are providing their time to the project are equally compensated. If, we have an advisory, group for our research center, so to speak, and everybody, community, academic, they get the same amount of money. We're not going to give a community resident less because they're not a PhD or whoever the case. Everybody gets the same amount of money. They're all putting in time and contributing their expertise. As far as where is the table, I have location, location, location. And so a lot of times, you can invite community to various things and then, they don't show up. You have to be transparent and collaborative. For examples, again, being an HBCU, a lot of our HBCUs have gates around them, which can be offensive to the community because it sets up this us versus them, like you're outside the gate type of thing. And so even when I worked for a state agency, our state office was downtown, not in the middle of downtown, but like a little bit further. And it was like there's no free parking. It wasn't near the train or the the train station. The bus schedule was difficult. And so having people to come out there, it just wasn't feasible all the time. So if you're trying to have meetings and stuff like that in person, you have to be considerate of where people, your community, where everybody feels comfortable meeting and what's feasible for them. Even online, if you decide to do online, if you're working with rural communities, sometimes that's not the best, right? Because of reception and broadband access type of issues. We've had a couple of listening sessions with rural communities. And so if they want to do virtual, they have had somebody in the community who they trust, who does have like good Wi-Fi or whatever, that person would be the one to set up the Zoom and everybody meet at their place and was able to share. So you just have to work with the community and see how to work out some of these things. I like to share this quote to really just get us to think about fully implementing CBPR and kind of understanding that there's broader systems at play, right? And so it says the impact of any programmatic or policy-based intervention is bound by linked oppressive systems, right? And so the potential impact of CBPR is really tempered by these larger oppressive systems impact on resource and power distribution. So CBPR can definitely be used as a tool to dismantle and address oppressive systems. And we want to make sure that we don't compromise our principles in our work, but we also have to remind ourselves that we are working against larger systems that have been in place for a long time. And so sometimes tempering the expectations of your community partners or even organizational partners, it may be necessary. Like we can only do, this much, right? But we want to continue to work towards creating systems that treat everyone with fairness and advance equity by reducing some of these structural barriers to their well-being. All right. So if you're willing, would love for you all to share a time when there was a power imbalance, and if you thought, or if you think now that CBPR principles might have shifted that dynamic. No power imbalance. Everybody just
I've I've got a little I've got a sad little story. Can I tell mine?
yes.
I sat in a community meeting and I was so thankful that I was on the I was not up front. I was in the crowd. A group without much contact with any members of the community won $1 million worth of grant money. This is a little different. It's not research, but they won $1 million worth of grant money to basically put in bike lanes that cut straight through the middle of the neighborhood. It was so much money that they thought that they should do double bike lanes on both sides of the street with with they installed these plastic uh kind of almost guardrails in there as well. And so they were very proud of themselves as they announced it to the community who had no idea what was coming. And the response that they received was was not what they were expecting. And an elder of the community stood up and took the mic and said, "Hey, if you look at our neighborhood and you think that, and you had $1 million, and you think that if you ever asked us and we would say priority number one was bike lanes,
Mm,
I think I think that just reveals you have no idea who we are and what we need and what we're going through right now." And that made for a really awkward community meeting that I learned a valuable lesson from. So
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely if they had um, spoken with this community prior to developing this proposal and, getting this funding, then they would know, that this is what was needed and this is what they could see as a resource and asset to their community and wouldn't have had that discomfort. Did they go through with the bike lanes?
they sure
Yeah,
did.
yeah, sounds about right. Hmm. Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Anyone else had any issues around power imbalance in research? Okay, we're good. I'm telling you, it's
Well,
not okay. Go ahead.
I don't this I'm not sure if this will is answering your question, but I remember my first CBPR study. I was undergrad. Um do you have you worked, Dr. Rollins, have you worked with Dr. Coakley before? Tanya
Tanya
Coakley?
Coakley. No, I know her the name, but I haven't worked with her before.
Okay. She was my mentor, and professor and mentor. She's who introduced me into research when I was undergrad. This was like back in what, like 2012 or something like that.
Mm,
And so I did a study under her, and so she allowed me to go out into the community and really get a feel for what we're talking about. And so I remember going into this particular community at the time, and I was doing fatherhood research. I was wanting to interview the fathers and the mothers, and just trying to identify the barriers at the time in this particular public housing community in Greensboro. But I remember um, that the receptionist that was a gatekeeper that I had to talk to, that would allow me permission to come into the community. The first thing that she was saying, she couldn't not get off of this ideology um, that the fathers were the issue, and that and she was what she said. She said something to the effect of, I think this would be a good study because there are a lot of single moms here, and the fathers are nowhere to be found. And when I try to have a conversation with her about just some of the policies that they have in place, the friendly visitor, where, I mean, the men weren't allowed to be in the homes, and they are around, they just not on the lease because the mom would get kicked out. She could not hear any of that. She couldn't hear any of that. And essentially, I found myself just giving up, trying to, I guess, change her mind. And just, I feel kind of bad to this day, kind of just agreeing with her to be allowed to be into the community.
mm,
Um, and so I guess from my standpoint, she had the power, that she was the gatekeeper that
mm,
will allow me into the community to interview, to interact with with the community members. But before I could be allowed, I had to adhere to her ideology of what of the issues were. Because I mean, it was a fluent conversation, but I didn't get the green light until I just started just saying, yeah, 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 you're right. I hear what you're saying. And then that's when I got the green light and was allowed to enter the community. But I mean, that was, I mean, what you talking about, 13 years ago. Um, but I mean, that was one time that I did experience a power struggle that I thought was very interesting. And what she didn't see is that she was perpetuating part of the issue as to why, uh, in some cases, the fathers weren't in the issue, weren't in the picture. But I'm not sure if that is answering your question um
Mhm.
directly.
Yeah. And what do you think could have uh, changed that as it relates to conducting CBPR?
Well, what I did do is the findings of the study, it did demonstrate that, or did show that the fathers were involved, and that it wasn't it wasn't that the moms and dads were bumping heads and then dads weren't wanting to participate, and that there were some more social issues that were causing dads not being in the picture. And so after we did the interview and we decided to present the data to her, and so we found that to be helpful. She was receptive to what we had presented to her. That it wasn't necessarily as cut and dry as dad not wanting to be in the picture, but there were some more larger constructs in place, and I found that to be helpful. Um, that one being able to present, her allowing us back to present the information, and then her being receptive to what it was that we were um saying, that the data was the story the data was telling us.
Mhm. Good, good. Yeah, we generally try to meet with anybody who we think would be a gatekeeper, kind of have a kickoff meeting to introduce them to the study and kind of get their feedback on how we can go about things so you can kind of get ahead of folks' challenges, with the approach or with any assumptions and just get on the same page. Don't try to convince people one way or the other in terms of like changing their perceptions of things, but to do like you did of like, well, we'll show the results, we'll share what we learned from it, and hopefully that helps to change their perception. But we do frequently run into that idea, when we start to talk about research with fathers, one way or the other. Sometimes it for me, if I'm talking to men about research that I'm doing with fathers, they assume that I'm doing something negative. That the research I'm doing is about absent fathers or fathers not doing something. So I have to let them know, like, no, that's not what I do. I don't do research about telling fathers what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
So then they kind of like, oh, okay. All right. Winding up on time here. Just wanted to get you all's thoughts in terms of how you would approach a project, a CBPR project. And this is just an example, but you can use your own if you're thinking about it as well. And this is just an example. If you wanted to work with the community to address men's mental health, how would you co-design a research study on this topic? And so think about how would you begin the relationship with the community to address this issue? And anybody can put in a chat or you can come off mute and share.
I was just going to say, for me, one of the first things that I would do is define what mental health means. From the perspective of the fathers, community leaders, just all the various stakeholders, I would want to get a clear definition of mental health among men.
That's so good because, and we've had these conversations with our coalition a couple of times on whether or not to even use the term mental health. For some of the dads, they feel like it is still the stigma of the term mental health, and so they don't want to use it. They don't want to use it. And then there's others that are like, no, like we need to be unapologetic. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about our emotional well-being. We need to go ahead and say it. So I agree with that, Dr. Lemons, of really defining what we mean by that. And is this the term that we want to use? What else do you think in terms of beginning a relationship or just getting started on designing a study on this topic?
Well, I think perhaps I'll use this as an opportunity to follow up on my earlier question. So I think, I was going to say maybe identifying community-based organizations within the community that might work on this issue already and like work with men regarding mental health or other aspects of health. And so maybe identifying and then reaching out to those organizations. But so I think the question that comes up for me is assuming that maybe that's an initial step, when you reach out, do you sort of immediately bring up the fact that you're interested in doing this sort of project and you're, that's sort of like the intention ultimately or the goal? Or do you just reach out in order to like, introduce yourself, set up a conversation? Like, do you not really mention the project? Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong way right there. I've used both, one saying, I really like what you all are doing. I see, this, and I wanted to learn more about it. Is there a way that we can meet? Right. And you can do that. Or you can say, I'm Rachel, I'm working with this organization and I came across your website or I came across a flyer or I saw this and it looks really interesting. Would love to learn more about it. I think that your work would fit well with what we're trying to do, blah, blah, blah. And just see if you can have a conversation.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and sometimes, I didn't have to go that route of introduction like that. If they have a website and they have like publicly available meetings or, things like that, just attending, and introducing myself there, seeing some things that they're doing that I think may align, that type of thing. A lot of times showing up goes a long way for folks. Any other thoughts on, so that's beginning the relationship and such. What about thinking about how decisions are shared? How would decisions be shared?
I don't have an exact answer, but I'm just leaning on transparency. Just being and it even goes back to what Rachel was saying as far as beginning the relationship, depending on where you already sit with that organization, even in doing that, even in approaching them, let's just say a relationship doesn't already exist. Even in approaching them, I still would lead with transparency in terms of this is what the project is about. This is the reason I'm approaching you. So I think just when it comes to decision making and sharing decisions, same principle. Just being open, honest, transparent, thinking about all the research around mistrust, in this context, all the history. I teach this every year when I teach research methods, just about the history around the reasons, the legitimate reasons why Black and Brown people are not very trusting when it comes to the research enterprise. So just having all of that in the back of my mind, I think transparency is one of the most important principles here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, being upfront with what it is you're wanting to do, wanting to achieve. How can we do this together? Yeah, and having those open conversations. I share everything. You know, if I get an email that's related to I'm sharing. I'm not leading the conversation. It's like, this is what I think about this. I just share it. You know, it's like, this is the document and that, and then when we come together, we can talk about what everybody thinks about it, how they think we should move forward. I don't lean in with, this is what I think we should do, right? It's always an open conversation. Even as we were, if you were talking about what's the definition of men's mental health, I'm not going to put up what the what the definition is and what do y'all think about this? Are we going to go with that? Like, leave it open and let people respond. As we think about various research designs, instruments, what kind of questions should we ask, on our survey or what? Here are a couple of examples of standardized instruments. What do you all think about these? I'm not saying this is what we use. Like, let me know what y'all think. So always giving a collaborative tone to every decision that needs to be made, I think has worked well for me. And then it's important to think about, okay, let me see what's in the chat. The last thing I was going to say is what does, okay, thank you, Rachel. What does success look like to both parties? That's critical to decide in the beginning. Like, what does it mean for this to come off well? What are we ultimately wanting to achieve together? And so success can be different from academic and community perspectives, and we need to make sure we're on the same page with that. So for us, it could be, publication, it could be grant funding. But the community may want to see more referrals. They may want, to mental health resources. They may want to see more mental health resources available in their community. A resource guide, like more people using services. Except, like, you have to figure that out in the beginning, what success looks like for both of us, and work that into the project. All right. And then lastly, last poll, those of you that hung on with me, thank you. Let's see. I want to know how likely you are to use it. I know that half of you have used it before already, but how likely are you to use CBPR principles in your work? And I'm not going to take offense if you say it's not what you want to do. That's good. I just want to make sure we can change your beginning answer, those of you that had never heard of it, to now you heard a lot about it, and may read some more about it too. Good deal. All right, so we got halfling, very likely. I'm unsure. Just cool. I'll move because we just want to get to these resources for y'all. Of course, our African American Child and Family Research Center, we have a number of webinars, and they are on our website about community engaged approaches, a number of research studies that have been done with these approaches. We also have a national conference on community engaged research, happens in the summer every year, Lord willing. Also, I've talked about the Morehouse model. That is a book, and there's a number of resources in that. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also has a Principles of Community Engagement document, which I mean is very thorough in talking about all of the steps of CBPR and community engagement, from planning to dissemination and sustainability. There are a number of books by and articles by Dr. Barbara Israel and Nina Wallerstein, my mentor, Dr. Tabia Henry Akintobe. Lots of resources and toolkits around about doing CBPR. So thank you all so much for hanging out. And I hope that this was a good last session for you all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Rollins. This was great. This was really, really great. Excellent job. As some of you might know, Dr. Rollins is our vice president in the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network, and she is our resident community-based participatory research scholar, and she's always willing to step up to the plate and share her expertise and knowledge with us. So we are so grateful for your wisdom, your knowledge on this topic. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing.
Absolutely.
Anybody else want to say anything to Dr. Rollins before we depart? Thank you to each of you for being here as well. We know that you could be so many other places and doing so many other things with your time, especially in the summer. So we appreciate you being with us today.